Let's get weird into it. Number 7. Anti-Whiplash Pillows. That soft, slightly adjustable rectangle behind your head in your car. The thing you lean back against at a red light, wondering if you left the oven on? You probably think it's a headrest. A little comfort pillow for the weary commuter. It's not. It's a beautifully upholstered anti-decapitation device, and its shape is a direct result of engineers thinking about your spine snapping like a dry twig. Imagine you're sitting peacefully in traffic, contemplating the profound mysteries of why the car in front of you has 3 different bumper stickers for the same politician. Suddenly, bam! Someone scrolling through TikTok rear-ends you at 25 miles per hour. Your body, held in place by the seatbelt, lurches forward. But your head, being a dense, awkward bowling ball perched on the delicate stick of your neck, isn't held by anything. For a split second it stays put, and then it whips backward with incredible force. This is whiplash. The medical term is cervical acceleration-deceleration injury, which is a fancy way of saying your head tried to leave your body without permission. The headrest, or more accurately, the head restraint, is specifically positioned and shaped to catch your skull before it can hyperextend your neck past the point of no return. It's a backstop, a catcher's mitt for your cranium. Early car seats didn't have them, or they were just these low, stubby little things that were more for decoration. The result was a horrifying number of severe neck injuries and fatalities from relatively minor accidents. Safety regulators and engineers looked at the physics of a human bobblehead in a car crash and designed this specific shape and height to prevent your vertebrae from doing a very grisly impression of a busted Pez dispenser. So next time you adjust your seat, give a little nod of thanks to the engineers who decided your head should probably stay attached to your body, no matter how bad the traffic gets. Number 6. The choking hazard loophole. There is a primal, almost lizard brain urge to chew on the cap of a pen. You don't decide to do it. You just find yourself in the middle of a meeting, gnawing on a piece of plastic like a dog with a new chew toy. It's a universal human experience, right up there with breathing and panicking about taxes. And it's this exact mindless habit that explains why the cap on a classic Bic crystal pen has a tiny, seemingly useless hole in the top. Your first thought might be that it's to regulate air pressure or prevent the ink from drying out. A logical, science-based assumption. And you would be completely wrong. The real reason is far more morbid and speaks volumes about our species. Pen manufacturers, most notably BK, realize that a significant number of people, especially children, but let's be honest, adults too, were accidentally swallowing their pen caps. And when an object of that specific size and shape gets lodged in your windpipe, it forms a perfect, airtight seal. That's it. Game over. You have a few frantic minutes before you suffocate. So, in a brilliant act of defensive design, they started adding a hole. It's not big, but it's big enough. If you're foolish enough to inhale your pen cap and it gets stuck in your trachea, that little hole provides just enough of an airway to keep you from turning blue, while someone who actually remembers the Heimlich maneuver from a corporate training seminar tries to save you. The design was so effective it became an international safety standard. That hole is a legally mandated admission that, as a species, we can't be trusted with small plastic objects. It's a design feature that simultaneously acknowledges human ingenuity and profound human stupidity. A tiny monument to our own self-destructive tendencies, hiding in plain sight in your junk drawer. Number 5. The self-cleaning murder weapon. Think about the grimiest surface you can imagine. A public toilet seat? The floor of a subway car? I'll raise you one. A doorknob at a busy hospital or a school. It's a surface touched by hundreds, maybe thousands of unwashed hands every single day. A microscopic metropolis of bacteria, viruses, and general human filth. And yet, if that doorknob is made of brass, it's one of the cleanest things you can touch. Because that doorknob is, on a molecular level, a relentless 24/7 germ-killing machine. The reason is a phenomenon called the oligodynamic effect. It's a $10 word for a very simple and very brutal process. Certain metals, like copper, silver, mercury, and the alloys made from them, like brass and bronze, are lethally toxic to single-celled organisms. When a bacterium or virus lands on a brass doorknob, the copper ions in the alloy launch an all-out assault. They essentially punch holes in the microbe's cellular membrane, causing it to leak its own guts out. Then, the ions flood the cell and scramble its DNA, making it impossible to replicate or develop resistance. It's a microscopic death metal concert, and the germs don't stand a chance. This is why you often see old, unlacquered brass and copper fixtures in historic buildings and hospitals. They didn't just look nice, they were a form of passive sanitation. A silent, invisible war being waged on pathogens. By contrast, modern stainless steel and plastic doorknobs, which look so sleek and clean, are a germ paradise. Bacteria can thrive on them for days or even weeks. So, that old tarnished doorknob isn't just vintage. It's a silent, tireless janitor committing microscopic genocide so you don't have to. Number 4. Explosive glass grenades. If you've ever seen a wine expert, or just someone pretending to be one, they often hold the bottle with their thumb nestled into that deep dimple at the bottom. It's called a punt. And while today it helps with pouring and collecting sediment in aged reds, its original purpose was far more explosive. That elegant little indent is a safety feature designed to stop the bottle from turning into a fizzy, glass-filled grenade. Back in the 17th and 18th centuries, glassmaking was less of a science and more of a let's heat up sand and hope for the best kind of art. The bottles were inconsistent, full of weak spots. This wasn't a huge problem for regular wine. But for champagne and other sparkling wines, it was a catastrophe waiting to happen. The secondary fermentation that creates those delightful bubbles also creates an immense amount of CO2 pressure inside the bottle, up to 90 psi, which is 2 to 3 times the pressure in your car tires. In a poorly made bottle, that pressure would find the weakest point, usually the flat, fragile base, and the whole thing would detonate. A cellar full of champagne could become a war zone of spontaneously exploding glass. Cellar workers had to wear heavy protective masks with iron mesh to avoid being blinded or killed by flying shards. The punt was an engineering solution born of pure necessity. Just like an arch in a bridge, the indented curve distributes the immense pressure more evenly across the structure of the bottle, making it significantly stronger and less likely to violently redecorate the room. It's a piece of structural engineering hiding at the bottom of your celebratory beverage. That elegant little dimple is a scar from a time when opening a bottle of bubbly came with a genuine risk of shrapnel wounds. Cheers. Number 3. The original scented candle. You've seen the costume. The long black coat, the wide-brimmed hat, the vacant glassy eyes, and of course, the beak. The long, terrifying bird beak that would make a toucan feel inadequate. The plague doctor is one of the most iconic and creepy figures in history. But that mask, the centerpiece of the whole ensemble, wasn't designed for intimidation. It was a primitive and deeply flawed piece of personal protective equipment, and its shape was dictated by the smell. During the height of the Black Death, the prevailing scientific theory for how disease spread was called miasma theory. Doctors believed that plagues were caused by miasma, or bad air, a poisonous vapor filled with particles from decomposing matter and other foul-smelling sources. To them, the stench of death and sickness wasn't just a symptom, it was the disease. So, to treat patients without getting sick themselves, they needed to filter this bad air. The beak of the mask was essentially a respirator. It was a hollow cavity that they would stuff with aromatic herbs, spices, dried flowers, and camphor, things like mint, cloves, lavender, and rose petals. This fragrant cocktail, they believed, would purify the miasmatic air before it entered the doctor's lungs. They were walking around in a cloud of potpourri, convinced it was a shield against the most devastating plague in human history. Of course, we now know the plague was caused by a bacterium spread by fleas, so the masks did absolutely nothing to stop infection. But they probably did make walking through streets piled high with corpses slightly more bearable from an olfactory standpoint. It's the most terrifying and iconic piece of failed medical technology in history. A Halloween costume born from the desperate and ultimately wrong belief that you could fight a pandemic with potpourri. Number 2. The punishment engine. That machine you pay $100 a month for the privilege of using at a gym? The one you jog on while staring at a wall, sweating profusely, and pretending you're actually going somewhere. It's called a treadmill, and its original design had nothing to do with fitness and everything to do with punishment. It was invented as an instrument of prison torture. Let's take a trip back to 19th century England. A civil engineer named Sir William Cubitt visited a local prison and was apparently horrified by the sight of able-bodied convicts just sitting around, being idle. This, he felt, was an unacceptable waste of potential energy. So, in 1818, he invented the tread wheel. It wasn't a flat belt. It was a massive, long, hollow cylinder, often more than 20 feet wide, with exterior steps. Prisoners were forced to climb these steps for up to 10 hours a day, essentially walking in place. Their collective weight turned the massive wheel. And this wasn't just for exercise. The power generated by their miserable, endless climbing was used to grind grain, pump water, or power mills. Hence the name treadmill. It was exhausting, monotonous, and deliberately soul-crushing. The point was to break the prisoner's will. The physical toll was so immense and the work so mind-numbingly boring that it was considered one of the most extreme punishments in the Victorian prison system. It was eventually abolished for being excessively cruel. The modern flat belt version for health and fitness only came about decades later. So next time you're sweating through a HIIT workout, trying to burn off a burrito, just remember, you are voluntarily paying to use a device that was deemed too inhumane for Victorian criminals. Enjoy your run. Number 1. The Childbirth Tool. We need to talk about the chainsaw. The loud, snarling, gas-powered instrument of horror that has been the signature weapon of countless slasher movie villains. Its entire modern identity is built on destruction. But the reason it was invented, the very first problem its serrated, rotating teeth were designed to solve, was not felling trees or terrorizing teenagers. It was to assist in childbirth by cutting through a woman's pelvic bone. Let that sink in for a moment. Before C-sections became a safe and routine procedure, a complicated birth where the baby was breached or too large to pass through the pelvis was often a death sentence for both mother and child. One of the most extreme, last-ditch medical procedures was a symphysiotomy. To widen the birth canal, a doctor would have to cut through the cartilage and ligaments of the pubic symphysis, the joint at the front of the pelvis. In some cases, they would even have to cut bone. This was originally done with a simple knife and a small hand-powered saw. It was agonizing, imprecise, and brutal. In the late 18th century, two Scottish surgeons named John Aitken and James Jeffray invented a device to make this horrifying procedure faster and cleaner. It was a small, hand-cranked tool with a chain of fine, serrated teeth that moved in a loop. It was the world's first chainsaw, designed to be a surgical instrument to saw through human flesh and bone in the middle of a delivery room. It was only much, much later that the concept was scaled up, powered by an engine, and repurposed for forestry. The tool of the lumberjack and Leatherface began its career as an obstetrician's bone saw. So the signature weapon of every cabin-in-the-woods nightmare began its life in a delivery room. It's a tool that went from bringing life into the world in the most gruesome way imaginable to becoming a symbol of gruesome cinematic death. And somewhere in that journey is a lesson about progress, I guess. That's all for today. I'll be making similar videos in the future. Subscribe to see them.